We are back to wrap up another week in the crypto and TradFi markets. We're going to be discussing all of the latest data that has come out, what we're looking forward to next week. Kevin is coming to you live from a houseboat. That's how much he cares about Money Never Sleeps. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. Before we get going, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. Nothing Kevin or I say is financial advice. We are not financial advisors. We're a few guys who just love following the markets, placing our bets, but please do your own research before making any buys or sells. Kevin, you're out there, you're on a houseboat in Virginia Beach, you're experiencing, maybe some of the effects of the El Nino that is going on right now. We're going to be talking about that next week. We're actually going to dive deep into how El Ninos impact the economy, what that could do to the markets, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Funny thing about houseboats is that it smells like feet everywhere you go, and it's 100% wet. Like you can't go anywhere without getting wet. The shower is literally 5'8", so if you're taller than that, you're fucked. But yeah, otherwise, I'm looking at the charts. I'm glad to be seeing some red. Uh, Hopefully, this is the start of something new, a new progression, at least for TradFi. And then we're seeing a little bit of crypto stuff that's pretty interesting. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be here live from the houseboat. It's like MTV.
Yeah, we saw crypto take a push up earlier in the week, and it's kind of been trading sideways ever since. The TradFi markets are looking to be heading for a losing week. We see the Dow early this morning, about an hour into the trading day. Everything is down between half a point and 1.1 points. We can also discuss yesterday there was a lot of data out of Europe around rate hikes over there. We saw Turkey with a 650 basis point rate hike. That's pretty wild, bringing their interest rate to 15%. We saw Norway go up 50 basis points. Big one was Bank of England with a surprise 50 basis point hike. Most economists have been pricing in, and the markets have been pricing in 25 basis points. They've stated that they'll probably be raising through the year, and they believe that they could reach an interest rate of 6.5% over in England. So inflation still running rampant everywhere. We are seeing just more and more data come out that has to be bearish. I don't understand the positive spins a lot of people are putting on stuff, but what has caught your eye over the last 48 hours since we talked last?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pouring right here, so sorry if it's loud, but it's absolutely insane to see that, a lot of this world is in a recession right now. We saw New Zealand's go into one. We saw, Germany or Eurozone entering a recession technically. So it's really insane to see a lot of this happen, and we're seeing the rate hikes continue to raise. But again, the U.S. consumers just don't seem to care. We seem to be kind of like forgetting about a recession or even the possibility of one here in the U.S. I think Janet Yellen was talking about how the possibility of a recession is a lot lower now, which is always take her for what she says, because inflation is also transitory.
Who's a better question? Who's a better counter trade, Janet Yellen or Jim Cramer?
I think if you trade both of the opposite of what they say, that cancels out the stupidity, and then you get a positive return, right?
Yeah, the inverse Cramer Yellen ETF has to be absolutely crushing it right now.
It's so loud here. I'm sorry.
It's all good, man. I will, I can ramble for a little bit. I can try to steer the ship if we need to. But, like I said, crypto has been just kind of crab walking. The VIX is something that, I follow to see where the volatility is. It dipped all the way down to sub 13. Now it's back just over 13. We see that the dollar has rebounded nicely over the last few days. It got down under 102. It's now just under 103. So some movement there. Tech is taking a bit of a beating. A lot of analysts at this point are calling for pullbacks across some of these tech companies that have been, have seen huge returns this year, whether it's NVIDIA, taking a monster leg up of 200%, whether it's Meta and Tesla, who are both up, 150+% since October and January, respectively. So there is a lot to see there. And, are we entering, as we wrap up this quarter of the year, and we move into the back half of the year, do we think that there's going to be, a continued pullback on the, with earnings coming out, or how do you feel about the markets right now? I know that you're bearish long term, but what are you seeing in the medium term?
I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the past few days is really interesting. Again, it seems more of like a tipping point or an opportunity to sell once again. I'm not telling anyone to sell at all, by all means. Like, I'm looking at a crypto. We're back in a really weird area where it's a supply zone. We see TradFi, like the Nasdaq for the past 3 days has been really insane. It dropped like 170 yesterday. It regained all those losses, and then now today it's right back to where it was, 2 days ago. So I think we're in a place where we are going to start seeing some of these earnings come back, not necessarily great. That's going into Q3, Q4. Maybe more so Q3 might be a little bit slower than Q4. People have been finding some money for the holidays, but again, we have to question whether are we going into recession or not, right? If we do start to see unemployment rise, some of these JOLTS numbers or anything like that coming in the next few months, then that's going to obviously affect our outlook for a lot of these things. But for the most part, it seems like people still have a good amount of money. They're just accumulating more debt. So that doesn't also give me a lot of hope, right? Again, we talk about this all the time. It's a really weird place where people are spending money, but people also are accumulating debt. That doesn't necessarily sound like it's going to be a long lasting, strong economy. That seems like, okay, we're stacking shit on top of bricks and eventually everything's just going to fall over. Uh, Personally, I think that we're still heading into probably the harder part of the year. I think a lot of economists and a lot of hedge fund managers and people, CEOs, were talking about how Q3, Q4, the second half of the year is probably going to bring in a light recession. That light recession could be a lot worse than people expect. It really depends. I think a lot of people are pricing out a recession at this point, so that might be also a dangerous place for investors and people who are managing tons of funds, to be in with that mindset. So I think being complacent or being confident in a certain position right now isn't necessarily the greatest place to be. Even if you're bearish, I will say that because obviously there are short squeezes. We've seen one since the beginning of the year. So you just need to be careful. But I personally think that second half of this year is going to be pretty nasty. And that's just based off of a lot of, the macro stuff that's coming up. But at the same time, looking at the charts, I think we're due for some blood. And again, that's just pattern trading on TradFi. We're putting a lot of patterns. We're overbought completely on, some of the biggest time frames. And I always look to the macro as, the guidance. Like, that gives me the most confidence when we're going forward. I might be wrong in the short term, but that macro tends to be right more often than not. So that's what I'm seeing for going into the end of this year.
Yeah, we could see a massive leg down, or we could see a massive short squeeze. There are $100 trillion of shorts that have been placed this month. To put that into perspective, that's the highest since April of 2022. I went and looked back, and the Nasdaq that month took a 16% loss back in April of 2022. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something similar, in as we move from June into July. At the same time, if people are a little bit more willing to buy, we could also see a massive short squeeze that sends things to even higher valuations. I know that there are some funds out there that are still saying that Nvidia and Tesla are good bets, even at these high valuations. The PE ratios may suggest otherwise. It's weird though. I listen to Bloomberg a lot, and a lot of these investment CIOs are just like, we're kind of taking some of the fundamentals and technicals and throwing it out the window and just trading based on momentum and sentiment right now. And that seems like a dangerous place to be. If you had done that, back, late last year, early this year, when sentiment was really low and you had kind of counter traded and you had bought the fear, that tends to be the better bet. Buying the greed gets a lot of people wrecked. Buying the FOMO gets a lot of people wrecked. So
take a look at everyone who was buying Bitcoin at 60,000 and saying, "Oh no, it's a great bet buying it here. It's going to go to 100K." Yeah, it may be in like 20 years time. You'll see it at some point go to that level. Same thing with TradFi and Nvidia and all these. It's like, think about it. It's like around 390, 400. Some of these levels. You could have bought it, but you could have got it at a discount a long time ago. Buying on a pump like this, it's like there's going to be a pullback. We haven't seen it yet, and that's the most dangerous part. I think it's whenever people get bullish, they kind of forget that anything bad could possibly happen, because the worst thing happening is missing out on all these gains, and that's what it seems like a lot of people are doing right now. And that's not necessarily the best buying indicator, is it?
Yeah, and buying at these levels, you're really hoping for continued momentum. And if you buy at these levels, can you stomach a pullback and holding on when it does pull back and not, exiting your position and panic selling and missing out on that next pump back up? Because, we talk about that on a regular basis. When we do see like a true bear market or bull market rally and the market start to shift, the majority of the gains are made in the first 10 to 14 days. So do you really have it? Do you have it in your stomach to buy at these levels? Or you're going to hold on a pullback so you don't miss out on all the gains? I think you have to be like a big part of being a successful trader, successful investor, however you, label yourself, is just self-awareness. Like, are you in the right position to make those decisions? For me personally, I like to try to make as few decisions as possible, right? Like, I know where I'm outmatched and I know where I have an advantage. And for me, patience is one of those things. Not succumbing to FOMO is one of those strong points. And, I don't need to make frequent bets out here. I'm not one of those who wants to constantly be gambling on things. I want to make as few big bets as possible and let them play out over a longer time frame. So be self-aware. If you're just investing for your retirement, just set it and maybe forget it. Walk away, DCA, however you want to do it. But let's move from that into some of the charts. We don't need to spend too much time there. I think we've seen a lot of chop in crypto. If there's anything, a few weeks ago, Kev, you pointed to a bloodbath coming over the weekend, and we saw that happen. So if anything like that jumps out at you today, please let me know.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a little bit more given 2 weeks ago, just because Bitcoin dominance is climbing. I think there's a lot of signals that we are going to see a pullback for a lot of things. But again, time is going to tell, right? Everything takes time. And maybe I was lucky. I was actually, I was calling it for it to happen the week after, but I said that some money was going to be moving that weekend, and it just happened to be 12 hours later money started moving faster than anticipated. So again, the space is fast, but I just want to pull up Bitcoin dominance because again, now it looks like we're finding some support on this one line we talked about being our high. I thought maybe we would have touched it and then got rejected, but we broke above it clearly, and now we're just kind of like trading on it. Probably going to see a little bit of a breakdown again here, but maybe if this is on the 1 hourly, so let's go to the daily. On the daily, we've been overbought for a period of time on the stochastic RSI for Bitcoin dominance. We're just climbing. Like, this is pretty insane.
Look at that green line.
I mean, you're really lucky that Bitcoin dominance doesn't necessarily follow technicals. Like, sure, it might find some support on certain levels, but I mean, this is pretty much reliant on the entire total market cap. But this is really insane to be looking at because it's like, what the heck? Well, why? I mean, look at how green that missile is. But I think it was it 1 hourly? Oops, sorry, someone text me. No, it wasn't this one. I think it might have been Matic. I don't know. We'll go into it, but you can see that we've been climbing. We're not above the high currently from this move to the upside. It's still up here, so I do think that we're going to keep climbing. And again, I think as Bitcoin dominance continues to climb, trading pairs are going to hurt alts, and then the money's going to leave the alts. It's something that we've been talking about for the longest. But look at the total crypto market cap for right now. This is the hourly. Got to get out of the smaller time frames. We can see that we're kind of forming this head and shoulders pattern pretty well, right? Like, we're already climbing on this side. We're pretty overbought on the stochastic RSI, so I could see us, maybe trade up here for a few days. I might have to adjust this shoulder down to like this level, and then once we hit our peak, we could see a breakdown. And this is the total market cap of crypto, which we're putting in this absolutely bear flag right here. People are putting in higher highs, higher lows. We haven't got a higher low here, so if we don't find, a higher high here. So if we don't find, some resistance up here, and we find it down here, then likely this is going to be a breakdown more imminent than not. Because high, and this right now is a lower high, and this probably will break down, especially with the daily being where it is. See the weekly. Weekly is going into the oversold, so we could be oversold for a period of time. This could be coming maybe in a week or so. This could absolutely stay down here as long as it stayed up here overbought. So we just have to keep an eye on that. But again, I think that more of this is going to be caused by, this drop would be a drop in alts, because the last time we saw this drop was when the alts 2 weeks ago completely, sold off that one night. It was like 20% down for most alts. That causes the entire total market cap to drop pretty significantly. So I wouldn't be surprised if this happens too, where we get to a point where it just goes down again. But we'll have to keep an eye on that. We can see that in the past week, total market cap of crypto has increased by, let's see, $104 billion. So that's a lot of money that's pulled in. I think a lot of it is also retail that is, buying. And the reason I think a lot of it is retail is because where Bitcoin's price currently sits. So we talked about this demand and supply zone, right? Supply is where we get rid of it. Demand is where we buy. Right now for the supply zone, we're taken into a perfect area where they could pretty much offload once again, just like they offloaded when we hit 31K. They're back in the supply zone. We haven't put a higher high in. We're still below the 31K that we pushed to back in, where was that? This was back in April 14th. So really interesting to see that. We got 2 days or so about in here past the peak when we shot up here. I think that we are putting in what seems to be a little bit of a, remember we were talking about that arc. We can see that we're completely overbought on the daily stochastic RSI. Price is technically pushing up, but the volume is, dropping here. We had a pretty good volume on Wednesday. So that doesn't necessarily give me a lot of confidence. I think we could see something very similar to what we saw back at 31K. You see that it kind of like started to curve off. We saw a little bit of a push further up once we broke through the supply zone, but this could be, finding some resistance. If it doesn't shoot up past the supply zone, then there really isn't too much demand. I think a lot of it is just distribution of wealth. So we're starting to see people who have a lot of Bitcoin who didn't get a chance to offload at 31K. It went down to 25K. Now maybe they wanted to go for a little bit of swing trade, had people FOMO in, and people are buying the supply at 30,000 plus. So we have to keep an eye on that. If we stay in here for a few days, that doesn't necessarily tell me that we are doing anything too significant, and we're actually just transferring all of this Bitcoin to people who are willing to buy at this level, and a lot of people are moving out. And one thing we're gonna have to keep an eye on to see if that's true or not is USDT dominance, tether dominance. We can see that we took a bit of a leg down, so a lot of people were selling the USDT and buying Bitcoin. Right now, we're finding some support on the 200 EMA on the daily. We're a little bit under it. We're like 0.01% under it. We find some support here. We're completely oversold on this stochastic RSI. If you look at the weekly, we're still pretty overbought, but we're still above the 50 on the moving average. I think that we are going to see USDT climb. It's going to be in conjunction with Bitcoin's price kind of coming down, and mainly alts, but we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Like we all know that alts are gonna, follow Bitcoin at this time, just because 51.58% of total market cap is Bitcoin. So those trading pairs for alts BTC are going to be hurting. People might switch over to USDT just to be safe because they are bleeding a little bit. So just keep an eye on that. It's at 7.33%. It's holding key support, in my opinion, right around here. If it starts to climb once again on the daily, then I think you might be safe. Key thing for the daily, in my opinion, would be getting above this 50 moving average. Across the 50 and the 200 would not be a great thing, so we keep an eye on that as well. And I just want to pull up the alts because, Matic, BNB, these are two that I've obviously have short positions on. I've been keeping an eye on them. But we're putting in another bear flag once again down here. This is on the daily for Matic. You can see that we're putting in, we're trading in this parallel channel. We're completely overbought on the stochastic RSI. We wicked above it, but we closed still within the channel, so that's not necessarily a bullish thing to see. If we go into the 1 hourly, we can see that obviously this is a parallel channel, but once again, we broke below it, and now we're kind of doing this curtailing this curve, which isn't necessarily a great thing to see. And I mean, I could even do this on the 1 hourly, and I think it's a reasonable thing to be looking at. Let's see, here's a head and shoulders pattern, and here it is. I could arguably say this is one left shoulder, head down here. You could say something like that, right? Maybe we have a little bit more to go, but for the most part, this could be a head and shoulders pattern on the 1 hourly, and we are within a bear flag. It tells me you're probably going to at least test the bottom of this parallel channel, which would be 61 cents. That's again, if everything is reasonable and the market doesn't decide to pump once again. But for the most part, I think that this could be a breakdown from here. So that's one thing to keep an eye on for this weekend. Again, let's look at the 4 hourly. 4 hourly is pretty oversold, so we could see a bit of a push up. But if we look at the
Kevin,
daily,
I'll be right back.
You're all good, no worries. I'll just keep talking. Daily, we're completely overbought, so we'll just have to. I honestly think that we are due for a bit of a pullback on this. We shot up from the low to where the high is, roughly. I don't know if it's 26%. I can't see with this, but let me get rid of this. We shot up about 27% from the low from down here from when we broke from this channel. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're due for that correction on the daily. So that'll take some time to see. And then BNB is the other one. Obviously, BNB was trading in a parallel channel. It broke through, and we're finding some resistance up here, and the daily is completely overbought. So I do think that we are going to see some negative price action for BNB, unless True USD or something like that starts to prop it up. Again, Binance, saying that True USD, the trading fees on those are pretty much non-existent. Not surprised. It's very similar to what they did with BUSD. So definitely, you could say what you hate the SEC all you want, but Binance definitely has played a part in their own demise, in my opinion. That's why it's trading at 243. And if we're overbought in the stochastic RSI, volumes are coming down, and we're finding resistance on the bottom of a parallel channel that we broke out of. Breakdown would be likely from here. Where is it going to go? Maybe we go down to the low at 220. That would be about a 10% drop. I think that the key level of support is going to be this 213. And again, they're fighting the SEC. They're going to need money for the long run. And again, they've been laying people off. Tells me that they're short on money and they're trying to make sure that they have enough of it. So getting more people to be trading without trading fees also is likely incentivizes them to lose, especially if they're international platform. They could be doing futures. People get liquidated easily. People get greedy, seeing that the price is going up. That they think it's going to shoot up. It's a pretty easy way to trap some people out. So they could be doing that for a specific reason. But I do think that BNB is probably going to be taking a bit of a hit, in conjunction with Bitcoin dominance just climbing so much. And then obviously these channels that we keep seeing, these parallel channels, they're likely to break down from here. So we'll keep an eye on those. But for the most part, that's what I'm seeing in crypto. Nothing too crazy. I think we just have to keep an eye on the smaller time frames for the time being, even though the macro is lining up with what seems to be, if you pull out of this on the daily, we broke out of this parallel channel. I don't think we're done from it. This was a massive parallel channel that we've been building, similar to Matic, since, from the beginning of June 2022, and then we finally broke out of it in June of 2023. So this took a whole year to break from, and I don't believe that we broke from here, this low, to create a higher low here, and that's bullish in my opinion. I think we're still due for a lot more pain just from this pattern signal. It was ascending triangle within a parallel channel. Not necessarily great. Volumes are lower than where they were back here. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But for the most part, I think this is going to go for all alts. We're going to see some bloody price action. We went up too fast, too soon. And the big thing is we are putting in terrible recovery patterns. If we're going to recover, it's going to take time. We're not going to start making higher highs and higher lows and think that we're in a bull market instantly, even if it shoots up 27% in 2 days or something like that. So just be safe out there. I think that's pretty much it for the alt market.
Okay. I think that is a good way to wrap it up for today's show and to close out the week. We'll be back next week, continue to look at everything happening in the markets. We have some interesting data earlier in the week around, the state of looking at demand in the economy. We talk on a fairly regular basis around potential for something terrible like stagflation. What does demand look like? We'll see those numbers with retail and wholesale inventories. We'll see more housing data. Very interested in the state of the housing market right now. And then next Friday, we get the big one, the PCE number, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. And that's definitely going to move the probability for a rate hike. So thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have not yet, do us a favor, hit some buttons down below. It'll subscribe to our channel, drop us a comment, share us out on social media. All of those things help Kevin and I out tremendously. So thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.